me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I believe we're live. I don't have any error messages. Can you hear me on the microphone? Can you hear and see me okay? Phil Adams is already here. Phil, can you hear me? Let me know if we are good to go. Percent. Okay. Can you hear the bell? What about the bell? Can we hear the bell? Let's try to get all the things working. Phil Adams says Frankie Army has 43 recruits. We are small, but we are strong. Well, you can't beat a small force that's dedicated to a problem or an issue. Harlan is here. He says Frankie has the best show. Well, I would agree with you, Harlan. I have the best show. Does some things that most other content creators don't do. Well, I would agree with that. I would agree with that. We're going to do some more of that today, Harlan. Phil says 100%. Boy, I'm gonna have to figure out this Bell. Bell is about 10%. Nate is here. Morning, Nate. Good morning to you. Hope you have your coffee. This is the coffee. I am the Frankie. This is Coffee with Frankie. Phil says audio is good. Bell is about 10%. That's interesting. How about now? Move it closer to the microphone. uh, who knows? Who really knows how this technology works? But what we're going to do is what we always do. We're going to take a look at the news. We're going to take a look at the news. And then at the end, if there's any cues, we'll take the cues and then I'll see if I have any aids for the cues. Harry W's here. Good morning to you, Harry W. Harry W., along with Phil and Nate and Harlan and everybody else, longtime watchers of the old Frankie shows. So good to see everybody coming back. We had to take a little break. But now we're in Florida. We've got that part of the plan executed. And so everything is coming together. And in fact, yesterday I passed yet another exam for my MBA on global economics. Phil, you will be glad to hear that I passed my exam on global economics. So now I know all about England and Scotland and Ireland and all kinds of places in Europe and all over the world because I passed my exam on global economics and I understand tariffs and international business, and all sorts of things related to global economics. And so the plan is coming together. And now I'm 71% complete. 71% complete with my MBA. So closing in on finishing that. And that'll be another step in the plan. Harlan's having cinnamon hazelnut. All right, a little cinnamon hazelnut. Harry says, how are you? Well, how are you, Harry? I've been talking about how I am. I passed my exam yesterday. And so I'm pretty happy with that. And so, how are you? All right. So, with that being said, I think we should get going on the news. We got a lot of news to look at. I said, iced mocha. All right, Nate, with Frankie. All right. And it says, congrats on passing. Awesome stuff. Yeah, exactly. It's not easy. It doesn't come easy to me, but we got to do it because it's part of the plan. All right, so let's see what we got on the docket for today in the news section. And hopefully, you guys can see this pretty well. Let me know if there's any issues. But number one, we got on the docket number one rule for watching preseason games. There's a rule, apparently, for watching preseason games. Then we'll talk about the actual preseason game that we had yesterday against the Commies, the penalties, Dan Mitchell's top 5 plays of the preseason. That's interesting. And then finally, looking forward to the 49ers. That's going to be a tough one. But we got to look forward to it. Maybe there's a way that we could figure out how we're going to play the 49ers and what might be successful against such a tough team as the 49ers, the Super Bowl team from last year. All right, so let's go to the first news item. Number one rule for watching the preseason game for the Jets. We got the Jets X Factor here. I would highly recommend that everybody check out Jets X Factor. Jets X Factor, which Michael Nania over here. He's writing an article, says number one rule of watching a New York Jets preseason game. So we got the preseason upon us. So if there's some rules for watching these preseason games, shouldn't we check those out and figure out what are we doing here? Here's Jason Brownlee says rooting for your team in a real game is easy. That's the easy part. Just keep yelling. Well, you could do that. Phil says the number one rule is watch with green bean. Yeah, but if you noticed, Phil, I was watching with green bean yesterday, and that's going to tie right into this. So perfect comment, Phil. If something good happens, you yell joyously. If something bad happens, you yell angrily. Repeat these steps for all of eternity. Well, that's one way to do it. But watching your team in the preseason, which is where we are now, is much different, Nania says. There are no stakes, nothing worth yelling about. Once the novelty of football is back wears off, many fans start flipping to another channel by halftime. Don't be one of those fans, Nania says. And I agree. There's a lot to learn from each NFL preseason game if you know how to watch it like the coaches do. All right, so what is he talking about here? This seems pretty intriguing. From the time you pick up your bat in the Little League, your coaches will drill the phrase, keep your eye on the ball, into your tiny skull. Well, that's true. Nania says, but erase that from your mind. To be a certified grade A preseason watcher, you need to follow one rule: take your eye off the ball. Now, longtime listeners and watchers will know that both Green Bean and I, especially when I was on the Green Bean show on Thursday nights, would talk about this exact thing. Take your eye off the ball. We used to talk about it. Pat Kerwin popularized this phrase in his 2020 book, Take Your Eye Off the Ball: How to Watch Football by Knowing Where to Look. It's from this book that I learned the phrase, et cetera, et cetera. I highly recommend this book as well. So, Nani explains from snap to whistle, the camera follows the ball, training fans to stay fixated on it throughout the duration of the play. This causes people to spend most of the play staring at the quarterback or the running back instead of observing many other simultaneous events that will determine the result of the play just as much as the guy with the ball, if not more so. Couldn't agree with this more. Instead of watching the quarterback, stand around for 3 seconds, watch the pass protection. It's hard to process all five players at once, so pick a player before the snap and focus on him throughout the play. Try to watch the same player for a few consecutive plays or drives to see how consistently he is winning his reps. Now, if anybody was watching the watch along yesterday with Green Bean, as Phil mentions here, you'll notice at certain points I was saying, hey, let's watch 91. Hey, let's watch 96. So I was kind of doing what Nania is advocating here. Like when we're on defense, hey, let's watch McGregor or let's watch LT3. These guys that we want to keep an eye on. So I was kind of making this point myself yesterday during the game because that's what I do. When we're on defense and we got McGregor and LT3 in there and whoever it may be, it really doesn't matter too much what happens on the play. But if one of our guys starts dominating, that's important because that means he might get another more reps. So, like we were watching LT3, as Phil says here, and he was number 96, and we said, okay, let's see what he can do. And he was dominating. And so, does that mean he's going to be a dominant NFL player? No, not necessarily. But it meant he dominated that level of competition at that time. So that's a good sign. So what does that mean? Next time, maybe he gets a step up in the competition, see what he could do against the second team or the first team even. Maybe that happens. But that's the kind of thing you want to do because the result of the plays, especially in the preseason, is not really um, consequential. But some of these players, whether they can make the team or surprise you and become out of nowhere, like Bryce Huff did, and become a real good player, that is consequential. And that is really kind of fun, I think. So he even says, pick a defensive lineman to watch. How fast is the get off? Does he generate push with his bull rush? Does he win with finesse moves? Like I was saying yesterday on the show, 91, McGregor, he seemed like he had one move, which is basically like a swipe move that he has. He swipes to the left. And if he has that leverage, he's got you. But also, I didn't see him have much else in his repertoire. So 91, if he gets good leverage and if he can swipe you from right to left, he can get by you because he's also pretty quick. But if that's all you can do, then obviously teams are going to plan against that and it won't be as effective. If so, that's why you need a lot of moves. Um, Yeah, it says here, don't wait for a defensive lineman to make an on ball play to notice him. Look out for the wins, for the pressures, and other subtle contributions that might not make it into the stat sheet. Exactly. Unfortunately, testing, testing, sorry about that. Testing, 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 testing. Let me know if you can see me and hear me. Unstable internet. That's weird. Let me know if you can see me and hear me in the chat. Let me know if you can see me or hear me in the chat. Then let's just continue, shall we? So I guess that was an internet problem. I have to look into that. That's one of the issues of moving to a new place. Internet may not be as stable, or maybe I'll have to put this on Wi-Fi. We'll see. All right. So where were we? Let's go back to this article. Okay. So I think we understand. Take your eye off the ball. Uh, Preseason is a great opportunity to practice this method of watching football with no stakes. You can put on your scouting cap, sit back, relax, and study Takaris McKinley's get off in his one-on-one reps against Cornelius Lucas. Preseason football, baby. All right. There's that. Let's move on to the preseason game. The preseason game. Right. Things look better now, Harlan says. It's not one thing, it's something else. If it's not the laptop, it's the internet connection. If it's not the internet connection, it's the camera or something. All right. So let's talk about the preseason game itself. Let's see what we got here. See if this stuff can work. So we got some thoughts, and then we got some stats. Commies at Jazz. I got 10 thoughts here. Some of this is obvious that everybody's saying Braylon Allen. Everybody's looking at this Braylon Allen kid. He's a stud. Uh, and I think that's pretty obvious. I think that's pretty obvious. So he was looking good. What I liked most about Braylon Allen was the vision that he showed. There were a couple of times when, uh, you know, he needed to use his vision to really find the holes. And I also like what he said after the game. He praised the offensive line, which you would think would be a common sense thing to do. But for young players, sometimes they don't necessarily do that. So it was nice to hear him say after the game, "Hey, my offensive line was amazing. They kept opening up holes for me and this and that." Indy Jets is here. Good to see Indy Jets in the house. Says, love it. You're back. I'm back. Indy. You just missed the internet outage I had. So Phil Adams says, whose spot can Will LT3 take? Well, we'll take a look at the roster here shortly, Phil, to see how it looks. Um, Malachi Corley. I think Malachi Corley showed you exactly what we're going to do with him. We're going to get him the ball and let him run over people. Run over people. So at least this year. And then as he develops his route running, he'll become more of a focus. Yeah, India had a freeze bean moment, that's for sure. Just internet just cuts out for no reason. You gotta love it. I mean, gotta love Florida, I guess. Leonard Taylor the third, LT3. Can he get a roster spot? Now, it's going to depend. We're going to take a look at the roster here in a second. Um, but he definitely has a shot. He definitely has a shot. Now we got to see more. I mean, just dominating against these guys that he was dominating yesterday, that doesn't, it's good. That's a step forward, but that doesn't mean anything necessarily. He's got to keep doing it against better competition. Nate says, I love me some LT3. Yeah, he's got the body type right. You see that the body type works. He looks the part of a defensive tackle. And then you see the quickness and speed, and it's like, okay, maybe we got something here. That'd be nice. Brandon Smith, what about that wide receiver? Made a couple of nice plays yesterday. Maybe he's a nice depth pickup. He's probably practice squad, but if we do have some injuries, it looks like Brandon Smith can maybe do some things and not be terrible, which is all you really want out of your practice squad guys. The interesting thing about Isaiah Davis, I think many of us didn't really realize he's going to be a big factor on special teams. I think. I think. So he'll be our running back three for sure. And then in addition to that, he's going to play a role on special teams because you also have to see about having two guys back there now with these kickoffs. So it's going to be Xavier Gibson, and it looks like our second guy is going to be Isaiah Davis. So that's quite valuable for a late, round pickup. Quite valuable for a late round pickup. McGregor, question mark. Well, we were watching him 91 yesterday and had that one move. Indy Jets reminds, yeah, if 6 people in here, please hit the like, hit the subscribe button, hit all the buttons as we try to grow the old channel back to where we were back in the day, back in the day. Uh, but one other thing I noticed, there was not a lot of fullback hybrid formations. We're going to take a look at some of this information here in a second, but there were no 21 formations. There were no fullback stuff. and we don't have a fullback in the roster. But for example, Ferkser didn't do much of it, or Kuntz for sure. So it may be that we're doing away with that, goal that we had for our fullback the last few years. And we'll have to see. Uh, Sometimes, you don't want to give away too much in the preseason, but formation wise, I've noticed in the past that we do kind of show that what kind of formations and personnels that we're going to have in the season. Now we all on defense, we were almost all nickel. I'll show the stats in a second. And this says the Sherwood conundrum. So this is something to watch. Um, whether Jeremy and Sherwood plays more this year. Now, last year we were 80% nickel, one of the highest in the league. And if we can if Sherwood, Jamie and Sherwood can cover, like some of the beat writers are um, saying Sherwood's looking good in coverage in the practices and stuff like that. And if that's the case, he can get on the field more and we can be in our base more. And that's good for our run defense, which is one of the things that people are worried about. When you're in nickel, it's hard to defend the run. And so, one way to combat that is to be in your base more. Our base is 4-3, but we're 80% nickel, which is 4-5. And so, if Sherwood can come in, though, and play more, we're going to still play a lot of nickel. But let's say we increase it by 10% or 15 or 20%. Well, that means we can defend against the run better, probably. And so this is something to watch. Jamie and Sherwood 4-3 nickel. That's something to watch in the preseason and early in the season. The backup QB battle. Uh, Interesting because both Peasley and Martinez look good. Look good, can both do some things. So you wonder if we keep both of them on the P squad and if they don't get picked up by anyone. Of course, Martinez, nobody wanted him until we picked him up. So I don't know if he's going to be a hot commodity, but looks like a nice guy to stash on a practice squad if we can. And if nobody wants to put in a waiver claim on him, probably might depend on injuries and things of that nature. But it's always nice to have good backups. And then number 10, penalties. So I was curious about these penalties. Not good to have penalties, obviously. Nobody wants penalties. But how do penalties really impact whether you make the playoffs or not? Well, here's all the playoff teams from last year. Or, actually, these are sorted by the penalties from last year. So how many of these teams? Now, we were first, so that's not good. We had the most penalties in the league, 124. That's not good. This might be a little small. Try to make it a little bigger. We were number one. We're number one. We're number one. But that's not good because these are the most penalties. But if you look at it, the Cowboys, playoffs, Browns, playoffs, Texans, playoffs, Seahawks just missed the playoffs, Titans were bad, Bills, playoffs, Packers, playoffs, Panthers were bad, Ravens, playoffs, number one seed, 49ers, number one seed, Cardinals, bad, Buccaneers, playoffs. So it doesn't seem to be any kind of correlation between having a lot of penalties and making the playoffs or not. Doesn't seem to me to be. So that's something to keep in mind. You don't want penalties, but it may not be that it really determines anything because some of the highest penalty teams made the playoffs and were number one seeds. And some of the worst teams down here committed the least penalties. The Raiders were bad. Bengals were on the cusp of playoffs. Falcons bad. Steelers barely made the playoffs. Commanders were bad. So Patriots were bad. Being least penalized team doesn't necessarily mean much, it seems to me. So that's interesting about penalties. So let's go back here and see. Now we need to go here and move this. And let's look at some data from the game and let's clear. Um, So this is from the drive charts that I keep. I only did 5 drives, and for the Jets, that meant 25 plays here. Then the second half, I didn't do charting, but you can see here that, um, in personnel groupings, we were just using 11 and 12. So no 21, no 22, no 13, and almost all 11 personnel. So this is kind of a normal distribution. You might see some other kinds of personnel groupings in a game, but it's mostly 11 and 12 are the most frequent ones. Our play distribution over these 25 plays were 11 runs and 14 passes. And we had 5 first downs, 1 touchdown, 1 field goal, 4 penalties, and we scored on 40% of our drives. So the drives, we had 5, Taylor for 2, Peasley for 3. Punt on the first 2, that's not good. Then Peasley came in and he had our first sustained drive and he threw that touchdown to Brownlee in the left corner of the end zone. Then we had a punt and then we had another 8 play drive, another good drive, all passes at the end of the first half. And Zerline came in and kicked a 56 yarder like it was no problem. Zerline kicking 56 yarders like it's no problem. 56 yarders. He just comes in, hey, no problem. 56-yard field goal. Yeah, no problem. So, not much you can really take from this, I don't think, but this is what happened. Um, First down, we'd like to see more first downs. Obviously, first 2 drives were not good. So, we'll see. But it was the first game. It was the first game. So, you never know. Let's go to what about the defense? We got to see about that. That's not really great either in terms of the statistics. So the defense here, again, I charted 5 drives and they had 37 plays. So they had way more plays. Uh, and you can see here, we were in nickel 95% of the time. We love our nickel defense. We love our nickel defense. And this is, to me, this is something that you really got to watch. This is one of the things I'm going to watch the most. Can we get into more of our base with Sherwood in there? Now, it's not going to apply in the preseason. Sherwood's probably not going to play in the preseason, and Sherwood's the guy who can do it. So without him out there, we're going to stick in our nickel. And that gives us a chance to evaluate some of these defensive backs that we have and so forth. We already kind of know who our linebackers are going to be. There might be some issues with who's going to be the fifth linebacker and stuff like that. But we pretty much know who our linebackers are. But the commies had this kind of distribution: 20 runs, 17 passes, and they were much more efficient than we were. They had 8 first downs, scored a touchdown, a field goal. So they scored on 40% of their drives, but they also missed a field goal. So that could have been another scoring drive. Only 3 penalties. Daniels looked really good, I thought. So if I were a Washington Commie fan, I would be very excited about Mr. Jaden Daniels. Looked very good. Looked like he belonged out there. No problems. Mariota continues to be disappointing. I think Marcus Mariota has been one of the more disappointing quarterbacks in the last, little while. I mean, he was a number 1 pick. He won the Heisman out of Oregon, and he just continues to be a disappointing player wherever he goes. Runner, but other than that, not much. Then Driscoll came in and played pretty good, I thought. Another mobile guy. So all 3 of these guys are mobile, which is why one of the reasons were in nickel so much. You can see here, Driscoll came in, had a decent drive, 7 plays, punt. Then he had a 12-play drive where they missed the field goal, hits the upright. And then at the toward the end of the half, they got a 4-play drive and they kicked a field goal. So our defense didn't exactly do great, but of course, all of our backups and third stringers and all that were in there. Now, let's look at so speaking of the positional battles, let's take a look at the roster. Let's take a look at this roster and determine what we got going on here. How can people make it? Well, most of our starters are set. If they're in orange here, that means they are a rookie, and red means injury or they didn't report in the case of. So you notice all of our rookies are not slated to start here. And you can see Brandon Smith is probably ahead of McCutcheon now. He's probably up in this area. Mm. Let's look at some of these positional battles. If we look at our defense, you know, but let's assume Hassan Reddick's going to report. I mean, at some point, Mr. Reddick, you got to stop lighting money on fire and just get in here and play. I mean, come on. Let's assume he comes in. These eight are pretty much set. If you look at it, our starters: Jermaine, Reddick, Quinnen, Kinlaw. That's an excellent starting line, and then the backups: Will McDonald, Solomon Thomas, Lake Ufotu, and Michael Clemens. So that's a lot of first round picks. First round pick, first round pick, first round pick. The starters are all first round picks, and two of the backups are first round picks. Then you got Lakey Fotu, the Space Eater main, and Michael Clemens. Salah always says we roll eight deep. So these are the eight. So then all these guys back here are really battling to see if they're not going to really replace any of the top eight. But the question is, are they so good that we keep 9 or 10 on the roster? That's really what it comes down to. And, what they can do, if anything, on special teams and how many special teams guys we need. Because the backup linebackers like Surratt, Iguavin, and Barnes, they can all play special teams. Two of these guys are going to make it. Probably not all three. Barnes probably makes it. And then it's a battle between Iguavin and Surratt. Let's see if we make this a little bigger. So, and that messes that up. And so, um, you know, we're probably taking two, and these guys both play special. So, but if we take three backup linebackers, then it's more unlikely that a guy like Taylor makes it. But also, we have to keep in mind how many cornerbacks are we going to take? We got the big three: Sauce, DJ, and MC2. Those are the big three. Stiggers is making it. Sticky Stiggers, as I call him. Sticky Stiggers. He's making it. Brandon Eccles is making it. That's five. Are we going to keep six? Well, JBC made his case yesterday. JBC was one of the ones who looked the best out of everybody yesterday. So, you know, JBC, if we keep him, that's six. And again, that means we might, and he can play, obviously, he can play special teams. So can Eccles, so can Stiggers. All those guys can play special teams. Whereas the big uglies, they have a problem because they may not be able to play special teams. In fact, Michael Clemens is one of the few defensive linemen who does play special teams. He's on coverage. Sluggo is here. What's up, Sluggo? So, but most can't. Like, Tack McKinley, Jalen Holmes, Denzel Smart, Bruce Hector, Watts, Taylor, McGregor. McGregor maybe could do it. But these other guys are going to have a hard time making it on special teams, whereas these guys can. So that gives them an advantage. Jalen Key's fighting for a spot. These guys probably no. Al Blades looked pretty bad. He gave up that long one yesterday. These guys probably aren't making it, but JBC and Key are fighting for a spot. Isaiah Oliver, can Key, beat out Isaiah Oliver? That's probably what he's fighting for right there, to be the fourth safety. Maybe he's looked okay so far. He's looked okay so far. But that's really what we're talking about here. So when we're talking about like who can, Phil asked earlier, who can Leonard Taylor really beat out to get a roster spot? Well, there's a lot that goes into it. It's really about him, basically making it up into this area here. But then do the Jets want to keep 9 or 10 defensive linemen over keeping an extra cornerback or safety? We're definitely going to keep 4 safeties. We're not going to keep 5. But do we keep 5 cornerbacks or 6? You see? And then it also goes to the offense where it's like, how many wide receivers do you want to keep? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are guaranteed roster spots for sure. And then beyond them, I think Brownlee's guaranteed a roster spot, though some people would say maybe not, but that's 6. And then it's like, okay, out of this group, is anybody else going to make the 53? Charles, they love Charles on special teams. They call him the Wolf. And so you got to think about that. Do we keep 6 or 7? And then Indy asks a good question here. What about a 4th running back? That's a question. You could keep 2 or 3. We know Hall's making it, Allen's making it, Isaiah Davis making it. Those are locks. So we got 3. Then we got these people here: Izzy, Valladay, Deion Jackson. Deion Jackson, we don't know. He just got here. We signed him. Izzy looked good yesterday. So, you know, that's a question. Can Izzy return kicks and be a backup in that regard? These are the kind of questions. Do we want a 7th guy here? Do we want Brandon Smith to make the team, or Irv Charles would be probably the preference, but Malik Taylor could make the team. Brandon Smith made a case yesterday, made some nice plays, but he's probably practice squad. He's probably practice squad. So if we're going to keep a 7th, it's probably Irv Charles. But then if you do that, then you probably can't keep these guys. They go to squad or they get waived and somebody picks them up. Somebody picks them up. So he says, what about the defensive end opposite JJ? Well, you got to believe Reddick's going to come in, Sluggo, at some point. So here's what it would look like, assuming Reddick comes in. It's going to be Reddick. These are our 4. These are our starters, Sluggo, right here. And once he comes in, this is a formidable foursome. I mean, this is a nice front, according to everyone and my eyes and everything else. I mean, this is an amazing front. These 4, and then our backups are Will McDonald, Solomon Thomas, first round pick, Lakey Fotu, the space eating run stuffer, and then Michael Clemens, who's okay. You can't have everybody be, amazing. This front, all 8 of these, this is a lot of people would say these 8 players are the best front pound for pound in all of football. These 8. So you can quibble with it. You can say, I don't love Michael Clemens or Will McDonald still has to develop and all that. But people who have looked at this said this front 8 is the best in all of football. So, it's hard to argue with that. And then we got some of these young guys who are fighting to get in there, which is interesting, like Leonard Taylor and McGregor, like we were watching yesterday. This is number 91, number 96. We were watching with Green Bean. Hey, let's watch these guys. Yeah. Phil Adams says, do you think B. Smith and Martinez get the first half next week? I don't know. Probably they split up that first half. Probably they split up the first half. They probably say, Peasley, you got the first quarter. Martinez, you got the second quarter. You know, like that. And then maybe they split it up where Peasley comes back in the third quarter. Martinez, you got the fourth quarter, something like that. So that they get some chance to play against, different competition. Something like that. Because I think they're going to want to see Martinez, especially against some competition. Because Martinez probably has the most potential. I mean, if you think about it, if you remember watching him at K-State, he was amazing. but he was mostly amazing running to the ball. So the question is, how much has he developed as a passer since he was in the UFL? And he did a lot of great things in the UFL. He was the MVP. Uh, so they probably, and Peasley's a guy nobody really thought too much of, but Martinez always had some potential. He was at Oklahoma, I think, before he went over to K State, Kansas State. So he had some potential, and so they probably want to see how much he's developed. And if we have Jordan Travis as if he's probably going on IR, so he's going to be in 25. We'll see you later, Jordan. But if we have Amart as our QB3 this year, that'd be pretty good. And then do you keep your QB3 on the 53 man roster? That's another roster spot, that we got to think about. So a lot of decisions to make, but the good thing is there's not a lot of decisions on the starters. We're talking about edge of the roster type guys, which is really nice. Biggest thing, of course, we got to get this man in. Son Reddick got to come in, please, so we can complete our team. Please come in, Mr. Reddick. If you watch this, we would like to have you on our squad. So there you go. That's got the penalties. What about, all right, next news item. Dan Mitchell's top 5 plays of the preseason. Why are we bringing this up? Well, let's see if we can actually hear this one. Let's see if we can hear this one. Here's Quantez Sticky Stiggers. Let's see if you can hear this. This is one of my favorite players. I'm sorry. This dude is he's one of my favorites. See if we can hear this one. We can't do anything today. Oh, there it goes. Okay, let's go. Hopefully, you guys could hear that. Uh, Let me know if you could, because next we're going to play Dan Mitchell. So I got to know if you could hear Quantez. Otherwise, you won't be able to hear old Dan here. Let me know in the chat. Wake up, chat. Calling all chatters. Calling all chatters. Audio. I got it. No, no. Well, nope, but I can read lips. No. Dang gummit. Must have changed when. Well, let's try this. Let's try something. Let's try something. Stop screen. And then what if I share it? Oh, look, I'm blurry. Something happened when we had that outage. Tire screen, screen two with audio share. Maybe this will do it. Let's also look at the settings for the camera. Ooh, back. Went to the other channel. Stiggers. Well, at least you heard something. Well, let's see if now these are basically Dan's top 5 plays. So if you can't hear this, um, it's not so bad. You can see top 5 plays from the preseason and Dan Mitchell. So the point I wanted to bring, reason I wanted to bring this up, something Dan that Richie says here, Jets Media. He says the Jets land 2 top plays on Dan's top 5 plays of the preseason. Eyeballs fire. Now, the reason this is important, in case you don't know, Dan Mitchell, this guy's a Buffalo fan, as you can see from behind him. He's a Bills fan, but he's one of these Bills fans um, who is honest and you know uh, is honest. So he's got two jet plays in the top in his top five of the preseason so far. So let's see if we can hear this. Even if you can't hear it, you'll see top five plays, and two of them are from the Jets, and then we'll get to see some other plays from other teams as well in the preseason.
Seatbelts because here are the top 5 plays of all the preseason games that occurred so far. By the way, make sure you like and follow for more daily NFL content. You're not going to want to miss a single video. Number 5 goes to Braylon Allen. Oh, New York Jets, why the hell are you going to draft a running back? You already have Brees Hall. Let me show you exactly why. You just took that man's lunch. This guy's about to be dangerous. Number 4, let's give it up for J.J. McCarthy, the rookie. Started off very slow, but ended up connecting with this absolute dime and another touchdown pass afterwards. Shout out JJ. Minnesota may have figured it out at QB. Third pick, how about Adrian Martinez? He was cooking up the UFL, and now he's cooking up the Washington Commanders secondary. Absolutely beautifully placed ball. Beautiful catch, man. Football is back. Number 2, Las Vegas Raiders, Minnesota Vikings. Drops back, tosses it, maybe a bit of an overthrow. Nope. Trey Tucker extends and makes a highlight reel. And then number 1, to make it bad enough, it was against my personal favorite team. You cannot deny greatness. Caleb Williams on the run, absolute dot. Let's see it from another angle. I'm sorry, but this is 1,010% giving me Patrick Mahomes vibes. You can't even convince me otherwise. Sound off in the comments and give me your top 5 plays, and make sure you like and follow so you never miss an update.
At that. So Phil says audio is working. All right, good. So maybe we've got this figured out. Yeah. So how about that? We got two. Buffalo Bills fan says we got two of the five top plays. Let's play Quantez again because this kid can get you hyped up. This guy can get you hyped up for a Sunday. Let's see if this works now. This might get you hyped up for all of Sunday. Get you going.
Every win, every winning. Win every day. We all gonna win. Win, win, win. Every winning,
We
and we
win.
still winning.
Still
And we're
win.
gonna continue to win. We're gonna win every day. We all gonna win. Win, win, win.
I love this kid, man. We're gonna continue to win. Win, win, win. That's it. He's my favorite. Sticky Stickers. He's sticky in coverage. Gotta love it. All right. So there we go. We got through our technical problems. We're gonna win. We're gonna continue to win. Win, win, win. Uh, so we got one more thing on the docket. Looking forward to the 49ers. The 49ers, well, they're pretty hard to beat. How are we going to look forward to the 49ers? How might we beat the 49ers, in fact? Well, going to match quarters. Highly recommend on Substack. Highly recommend on Substack match quarters. Match quarters. I would say go to subscribe to Match Quarters. You get incredible football knowledge. It is on Substack. I am an investor in Substack, but still, nonetheless. And we have a headline here: How the Browns solved the 49ers offense. Well, this is interesting for us for two reasons. First, we got the 49ers to play in week 1. Second, our defense is almost a carbon copy of the Cleveland Browns. So how might we beat them? It says here the Browns utilized a combination of cover 1 and a well-timed 5-man pressures, which would be new for us, to lay the groundwork for the Chiefs game plan in the Super Bowl against the 49ers. All right, let's see. So the defensive coordinator for the Cleveland Browns is Jim Schwartz. The last time Jim Schwartz called the defense before the season with the Eagles in 2020 when they were 4-11-1. So the Browns were looking for a change, move on from Joe Woods, and he hired old Jim Schwartz. Fast forward to the conclusion of this season, the Browns sit second overall in defensive DVOA, second in pass DVOA, fourth in run DVOA. Defense played fast and aggressive, just like us. So now here's a quote right here that I think Jet fans should pay attention to. Schwartz said this: "It's hard to win in coverage. If you can rush with four, it allows your blitz game to be so much more effective because you're blitzing on your terms." That's what we do. Cleveland ran cover three in the preseason. That's what we do. Then played cover one in the NFL once the season began. That's kind of what we do. End quarters. When Schwartz arrived in Cleveland, the secondary was already talented. So are we, but it needed to be more consistent. Browns beefed up their personnel with Miles Garrett to add to him. Added these people. Schwartz's defensive philosophy stems from a four down, middle of the field close base. That's where we are. Last season, the Browns ran middle of the field close coverages on 72.4% of their snaps, and only the Cowboys were above the 70% mark in usage. Even in cover three, Cleveland led the NFL at 33.4%. So here's the coverages. You can see cover one, cover three, cover two, quarters. So we're a little different in that we use more quarters, let's say. Now, let's get down to here. Running cover. So hopefully you can see me and hear me. I think we had another outage, but we're getting through it. Let me know in the chat. Audio check, audio check. Let's go down to here. Audio check. So this is nickel one lurk. Yes. Okay. Nickel one lurk. So we're in nickel. So we're going to use our nickel all the time. So we're in cover one. Here's our guy, middle of the field closed. Oh, and one thing I wanted to explain too, so some people may not know how the field works when we're talking about this sort of thing. Middle third of the field is here. So when the middle of the field is closed, that means we got a safety right here. When it's open, we got a safety over here and a safety over here. This is the hole or the box, flat curl. This is the flat where receivers will run a curl, so it's called a flat curl. This is the hole or box, as it's referred to. Deep third, middle of the field, third. So when we're using this and we say middle of the field closed, that means we got a single safety in the middle of the field. When middle of the field is open, we're saying we got a safety on each side of the hash here, and the middle of the field is then open. Okay, general information. So here you see the middle of the field becomes closed. We have a rat or a spy here with the linebacker. This is what they're talking about. Nickel one lurk. Browns have several ways to run cover one. What looks to be a simple coverage can be amplified with the use of spies or rats. These players are allowed to work off the vision of the quarterback and can be placed in the second or third level of the defense. The toolbox allows defenses to utilize a four-man rush with post and low hole support. This is probably what we're going to do against the 49ers right here. The use of cover one kept the windows tight in coverage, forcing quarterbacks to hold the ball longer. Slight hesitation amplified the rush that was already tremendous. With an elite D line, we have, and a secondary that excelled in man coverage, we have also. The high cover one usage simplified the role of the front six and allowed it to play fast against the 49ers. The defense only accumulated one sack, but the passing game was primarily rendered useless all game. Here's an example of what that means. Here we have the Browns against the 49ers over here. Um, So you can see ball on the 39, second and 8, first quarter. They're 49ers are up 7-0. Right. So what we got here is middle of the field closed. This is the spy, 4 down linemen. Mhm. 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 Happened here is you can see the vision of the quarterback. So he's working off the vision. So this is our spy right here. And he is just looking at what Purdy is looking at. Purdy turns his head here. He's looking for Ayuk as the primary receiver on this route. But he can't get him because he sees this wall defender here. Wall means you got to throw it over my head. But he can't throw it over his head because you got this guy here, right? So what we're seeing is something that we can run to prevent this first option. So Ayuk is the first option here, and you can see the pass rush is doing its job. So Purdy couldn't get that first option. Now he's really in trouble. Why? Because of the pass rush. Now what? Well, look at all the guys. They're covered, covered. This guy's double covered, covered. Where's he going to go with the ball? And the pass rush is closing in. This is what we want to do, right? Maybe he could get it to McCaffrey out here, but he's not going to get much of a gainer. So in this case, he escapes. This guy misses a tackle. And this is all 22 footage, by the way. And Purdy scrambles and is able to make some yardage out of it. But overall, that's pretty good. You'd like to have sacked him there, but that's pretty good. And I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to try to take away some of those primary options, let our defense get home. I think that's going to be kind of what we do. There's other versions, they call it nickel one cross. Their versions. Here's another interesting play. Here's an interesting play. Let's just take a look at one more, then we'll do question and answer. All right, so that's the situation. Now, here we are in the low red zone. Got our 4 down linemen. And we're gonna watch what's interesting about this clip is the communication between this linebacker and this cornerback. So when you have a guy like here's Ayuk off the line, and for the first 5 yards, the coverage responsibility is this linebacker, knowing he's got cornerback help behind him. And if so, this is probably a choice route by Ayuk. He could go out, he could go up, he could go in, depending on this coverage. If he goes out, then or up, I guess, this linebacker is going to hand him off to the cornerback, which is what happens. Now, here you see what he tries to do. He tries to get a shove in for good measure. Okay, that's good football. But the problem is, once he hands off this receiver to the cornerback, he now has a new responsibility named Christian McCaffrey right here. And so he went for this shove. Okay, that's good. He's helping out his buddy by getting the receiver off his track, but it cost him a step. And now McCaffrey has a step on him. But keep in mind, this safety is also helping. And so that shove probably cost him this reception, but he's still in good position to make a tackle, and the safety comes to help. Safety hits him, and there you go, rally to the ball. So I think that's a good example of how modern day coverages work, where you always hear the defensive backs talking about communication and stuff like that. What does that really mean? Well, there's an example right there. There's I think that'll do it for the news. We've had too many outages of the internet during this broadcast to continue on with the news. So we'll do any Q&A. If you have any questions, I'll try to give you some answers. But otherwise, we'll call it a Sunday with all of these technical issues that we have. So let me know. Coffee with Frankie. Phil Adams wants to know, what is the time scale for the locker room turning on Reddick as not being made of the right stuff, or do they support him no matter what? Well, this is where, you know, the modern era of football comes in. So they're all, of course, union brothers. And so if Reddick is able to make more money, it's better for all of them. And so it's not like the old days, where the union wasn't as strong. And the more money Reddick gets, the better it is for all defensive linemen and all defensive ends and so forth. So I don't think they're going to turn on him. I mean, now is it great for team cohesion and team unity? No, it's not great. I don't think they will turn on him, but I do think they probably look at him like a somebody who just comes in for 1 year, helps us this year, and I don't think the Jets are going to resign him or show him any loyalty. I think this guy's been a malcontent now for a few years. I don't know how any team really is going to want him. I don't think this is good for his reputation. I also don't see the value of it from his perspective. Like, what does he think he's going to get? And I think he's getting bad advice from his agents, and he has two very good agents. So I don't understand it from any point of view. No reporter has articulated anything other than this is weird, this is strange, he should come in. Nobody's making any sense of it. He has two very good agents. His agents are Tory Dandy and Jimmy Sexton. Those are excellent agents. So he's not getting poor advice, you would think, because they're very knowledgeable, experienced agents who know what's going on. So it's hard to, and also they're not feeding the media any information that would help the player. So usually when you see reporters reporting information, especially somebody like Connor Hughes or Zach Rosenblatt or any of these guys, Chimini, Dick Chimney, they're getting their information from the agents. The agents are feeding them information and saying, hey, put this out like this, put this out like that. And that's how it works. But no reporters are putting out any information that would make Reddick put Reddick in a good light. So what are the agents doing? What are they doing? They're not giving him any good advice. They're not putting out any good PR through the media for him through the reporters. So what is going on? Nobody really quite knows, and it just seems like he's making bad decisions. So I don't think it's really a problem for the locker room. He's also a guy where he's a defensive end who rushes the quarterback and sacks the quarterback. So it's not like he's, somebody on the offensive line where we need cohesion there, or a quarterback who's a leader like that, or even a defensive back person who there's a lot of communication involved, like we just saw with passing guys off and so forth. So we got to build up our stuff with communications. But so he's just a defensive end who's going to rush the quarterback. So there's not a lot of communication he's going to have to do. He just go ahead and do it, sack the quarterback. Okay, great. So I don't think there's any real problem, but I also don't think that it makes any sense. I don't know who it makes sense for him to do this. It doesn't seem to make sense for him, the agent, the team, nobody. So why is this going on? He's just taking money and burning it, throwing it out the window. Why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense. So I don't know, but I don't think it's a problem. They'll support him as long as they can help the team. They may not be best friends with him, Phil. They may not, consider him buddy buddy or like anything like that. But he's going to come in and help us, and we're trying to win here. We're trying to win. So I don't think it's a problem, but it also doesn't make any sense to me. Logo says, "What say about Leonard Taylor third?" Yeah, maybe you missed it earlier. We were talking about him, Sluggo. So what had happened is he looked good yesterday. That's preseason game number one. He put a lot of good stuff on tape. So he put himself in the mix to move up. in the rotation and maybe play against some better competition going forward in these next two games. We got to see. So far, so good with Leonard Taylor the third. He looked the part yesterday. Now that was against mediocre or worse competition. The third, second, third, fourth, fifth stringers in there. So he dominated them, and that's good. But now we got to see him do it against better competition. He's in the mix to maybe make the squad. We have a relative weakness on defensive tackle, so he's got a shot. And so we got to see what he can do. But he put himself in the mix. He put some good stuff on tape. Now we got to see what he can do against better competition and see what he keeps doing in practice and so forth and so on. But he's definitely in the mix to make it. He's one of those guys who are on the edge of the 53-man roster. Uh, we probably, some of the things you have to think about when you're talking about these guys also is who can make it to the P squad without getting claimed. Like Zach Kuntz probably can go to the P squad without anybody claiming him. So he probably is going to the P squad then because he can make it there. If we put Leonard Taylor the third, if he could, let's say LT3 keeps putting up good tape, as we move along here, let's assume that. Well, if we put him on waivers, somebody's going to claim him. So that means if we really want to keep him, then you got to put him on the 53 man. Whereas Zach Kuntz or Zavarian Valaday or one of those types, they can probably make it through waivers. So then they can go on to the P squad. You don't need to keep them on the 53 man to keep them away from other teams. Yeah. So Taylor the third, yeah, let's start him. Let's play him against a higher level of competition, the highest we can. Let's see what he does in the joint practices and stuff like that. We got joint practices coming up. Start him in the preseason games. I think he's put himself in the mix now for consideration. Uh, for consideration. Like the coaches may want to, okay, okay, LT3, you did good. Now we need to see it against, some higher competition, including the starters for the other team. Why not? Why not do that? Let's see what he can do. And if he holds up well there, then he's got a real shot. But it also depends how many defensive linemen do we want to keep? How many other people do we want to keep? What's the special teams look like? That all matters, and so forth and so on. Phil Adams said, "Any chance you make the watch with Bean for Panthers game? Guessed maybe. Yeah, maybe. So I couldn't do it yesterday because the computer was all. I have to set up my computer differently when I take these exams, Phil. They watch you like a hawk. These are proctored exams, and you got to have your camera a certain way, and so forth and so on. So I had to reconfigure everything, and so by the time I got to the game, I had just finished taking the exam, so I didn't have everything reconfigured up the way it needs to be to here. So the question is maybe, yeah, maybe I will. But I also like to do drive charts and stuff, but I can do that while on screen probably with Green Bean. We'll see if Green Bean wants to have me on. You never know. May not want me on there, but he probably does. One says that's the Jets' problem. Some players, if they get cut, get claimed. If a team claims a cut from another team, do they have to be on the claiming team 53? No, it depends on once you're on the 53, you're safe, Harlan. Once you're on the 53, you're safe. Now, the cuts, what happens is at the end of camp, anybody you want on the P squad has to go on waivers unless they're a vested veteran, in which case you just release them and they can do whatever they want. But the young guys go on waivers. And then once they're on waivers, they can be claimed by anybody. If they go unclaimed, then you can put them on the P squad if you want to. Vested veterans, they just get released. They don't get waived. Once they're released, they can sign with any team or they can decide to join the P squad if you want them to. But once you're on the 53, you're safe. No one can claim you off of somebody else's 53 man. Now, once you're on the P squad and the season starts and all that, then somebody can claim you off the P squad if they put you on their 53 man. And the reason for that is because once you're on the 53 man, you get a lot more money. So, from a union perspective, you have to allow somebody who's making a lot less to be on the P squad. You have to allow them to go up to somebody else's 53 man so they can make, a lot more money and also get a chance to play in the league also. But from a union employee perspective, you can't, block somebody from joining somebody else's 53 man squad and keep them on your P squad because you're preventing them from making the earnings that they should be making in somebody else's 53 man roster. So that's how all that works. But it's going to be interesting. Yeah, people claiming our guys. I mean, that's a good problem to have. That's what happens when you're a good team. You have good players, and so some of the players you want to keep at the end of the roster, you want to keep them on your P squad. Other teams want them on their 53 man. That's how it works. That's how it works. Lord says, "Nice crib." This is a fake background. This isn't my crib. This is like aspirational Sluggo. Someday I'll have something something like. All right. Well, I guess we're winding it down. Let me know if there's any other questions. Try to figure out our dang technology for next week. Technology for next week. I got no guest appearances, but if anybody would like me to be a guest appearance, feel free to hit me up on X, Flatbush Frankie on X. Um, that's where I am, and you can send me a message to guest on your program. Otherwise, I'll try clipping some of these for the week, and we'll be back next week with Coffee with Frankie on Sunday, 10 a.m. And maybe when is the Panthers game, anyways? Is it next Saturday? If it's next Saturday, that'd be good. Maybe I'll see if Green Bean wants me on there. There's when we should really dominate the Panthers. That's for sure. But otherwise, I'll see you guys next week on Coffee with Frankie. Thanks for being here. Appreciate all of you. Harlan says Saturday night. Okay. So that's I'll probably be, well, we'll see. But otherwise, I'll see you guys next week. Maybe I'll see you Saturday night and then Sunday morning for more Coffee with Frankie because you can never have enough